Hi, it's Nikki here from Happy Hormones for Life, and today I am really excited. I'm chatting with the lovely Rachel Boon. Now, Rachel, I'm going to kick off with, first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me. But also, I want to ask you, tell us what you do and why you're so passionate about female health.
Hi, Nikki. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. So, I am a naturopath and a herbalist, and I'm a women's health specialist. So, I am really passionate about treating with women in states of hormone transition. So, people in puberty, in pregnancy, and in perimenopause. And it really lights me up because I feel that herbal medicine and naturopathy have so much to offer. The NHS obviously has its role to play, but I feel like as an adjunct to what the NHS offers, the complementary system of medicine can offer so much more, either alongside or instead of, in some people's cases. And so I've been working in practice for 20 years, 15 years as a generalist, and the last 5 as a women's health specialist. And I see people in clinic and virtually all over the world. And it's a pleasure and an honor to help women reduce suffering. That's my reason why I get out of bed every day, is to help reduce suffering in women. And I've got my lovely witch's apothecary there, my herbal cabinet. And I use, obviously, as a naturopath, I practice a food first approach. And I've got my lovely herbs, I've got nutrition and supplements and lifestyle, and all of those things together can make a huge difference to the women that I treat, both virtually and in clinic, and in my support groups as well.
Amazing, amazing. And how I know that you are you kind of practice what you preach, don't you? You are a nature lover, you eat brilliantly, and actually you're a vegan and you've been a vegan for a long time. Can you just tell me a bit about how that happened and why and how long you've been doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a practitioner for 20 years, but a vegan for 25 years. And I was vegetarian since the age of 10. And then when I was in my 20s, I was working in London and I got sat next to a lady in the trade union that I was temping at. And they said, "Oh, you'll get on with this lady. She's a vegan." And I said to her, "Costs a bit much, isn't it? The animals produce milk for us to drink." And she gave me this leaflet called White Lies. And I read it about the horrors of the dairy industry. And it really, do you know what? It really broke my heart, and I could never unsee the pictures that were in that leaflet. So I started reading about it a bit more myself, and then I could never really go back. So I turned vegan back in, I think it was 1999. And back then, oh my goodness, it was pretty hard. Like the vegan cheese that you got back then, it was a little bit like, get this out of my mouth. There was very few products. If you were lucky, like things like hobnobs and ginger nuts were accidentally vegan, but no, there was no like vegan markings on any of the food. It was basically, your fruits, your nuts, your seeds, your veg, and your grains and your sea vegetables. So it was pretty tough. But if somebody was to say to me now, what are your 3 main reasons that you're a vegan? I would say, one, fodder crops. I'm passionate about reducing food chain inefficiency. I think it's bonkers that we grow grain to feed to animals so that we can eat the animals. 3 steps: food chain inefficiency. I believe we should grow grain or grow produce, eat produce. 2 steps. So I'm anti fodder crops. The other reason I'm vegan is the planet, say no more. And the third reason I'm vegan is health. Actually, a lot of people think as a complementary therapist, I would be vegan because of health reasons first and foremost. But for me, it's a really nice side effect of being vegan.
And you feel good on it, I presume, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. And you're one of
Absolutely.
the actually I've known you for a while now and you are super energetic. I've never known anyone that bounces around like you do and gets the stuff that you get done in a day and still smiles through all of it. So it must be suiting you, I guess.
Oh, that's really kind of you to say that, Nikki. But also, we're lucky, aren't we? Doing what we do, we have the knowledge and the toolkits to be able to access things to make ourselves healthy. And every day, my little self-care practice, when I wake up in the morning, I practice gratitude for 3 things, and I just think of, and they could just be like, I'm grateful that my duvet's decent, or I'm grateful that I
I woke
slept
up
well.
today.
Yeah,
Fine.
exactly. Or that my partner didn't do noisy breathing in the night, or whatever. And I do my 3 gratitudes every morning, and I also do a body scan, and I just see how I'm feeling out of 10. And if I'm not feeling like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 every morning, then I know straight away I've got the tools and the knowledge to do something about it. But generally, that's what I'm aiming for, an 8 or 9. But
Yeah.
I have 10 out of 10 energy days most weeks. Like I would say today's a 10 out of 10. Slept really well, slept in the study because I didn't want to risk being tired for this or my partner doing noisy breathing. And so, yeah, 10 out of 10 is quite common for me. And I feel very lucky, but, you know, I do practice what I preach, as we all try to in our industry, right?
Yeah, we don't always succeed, I have to say, but you know, yeah, we do know what we should be doing, I guess.
Yeah. And you know,
Um,
health is a dynamic state, right? So we've all got to be, you know, doing these little, you know, tacking along every day, don't we?
Absolutely. What do you find are the main challenges for people eating a 100% plant-based diet? Because it's not always easy to do it well, is it? And along the way, as you're thinking about this, what are some of the myths that you might want to dispel about being a vegan?
Okay, so let's start with challenges. So I would say what people think of the challenges are calcium and iron and protein and B12. I would say people always think, oh, where'd you get these? Where'd you get those? Whereas when I see people's blood work, which obviously we see people's blood work all the time in our clinical work, I see just as similar issues with omnivorous patients as I often I see more issues with the omnivorous patients' blood work than I do with the plant-based one, because people often think with vegan, oh, you're going to be anemic, but often because vegans know they have to work at being anemic, they're quite good at having their iron containing foods. So what people think will be the issues and what actually are the issues that can be quite different. I see that for the vegans that I treat in clinic, and the things that I have to work hard are protein, because you can get enough protein, but you have to be more conscious about it. And what I mean by that is, you know, people say, oh, quinoa and avocados for protein. They're great, definitely do still have them, but you need things that even if you're looking at doing 1 gram of protein per kilo of body weight. So say I weigh like 80 kilos, so I need about 30 kilos per meal, 30 grams of protein per meal. To add up to sort of 90 grams per day of protein. And, you know, unless you're having like tofu or tempeh, or like protein shakes, it's actually quite hard to hit those conservative protein needs. And a lot of people don't like tofu or tempeh. So that could be a challenge. I fortunately love tofu or tempeh. And, you know, I was just looking at the one that I've got next to me here. And, you know, a block of tempeh is 42 grams of protein. And I can easily have that for my lunch with some garlic mushrooms all scrambled in, a mashed avo on the side and a sprinkling of seeds. So I'm probably pushing like 50 grams of protein around the block for my lunch if I have a block of tempeh. So protein is something that vegans have to work at. They can achieve it, but they have to work at. The other thing I would say is omega fats, because a lot of vegans don't necessarily like nuts or seeds. Obviously, they're not eating your cold water oily fish like a lot of omnis would be. And, you know, the nuts that contain a lot of omegas, like walnuts, they're the ones that everybody goes, oh, don't like that, they dry my mouth out. You know, they're not one of our sort of nice, you know, popular nuts. So I would say that taking an omega supplement of EPA and DHA, preferably of an algal origin, would be a must do for vegans. They need to get their omega fats in their diary, and that's in their diet, and that is an easy hack to just take the supplement. And the third challenge for vegans, I would say, is eating out. Oh my goodness! Even though, you know, don't get me wrong, I live near Brighton, so it's like a vegan mecca here. I travel up to London for meetings all the time. London's amazing, but it's just when you go to like an alpine ski resort, or you go to like a town in the north, and you don't have any options on the menu. So that could be a challenge. Like, I'm no stranger to having a mixed salad and chips. Like, that's always my back burner. So sometimes eating out can be a bit of an issue, but I find most places, if you phone them up and say you're coming along, they'll be quite accommodating for you. In terms of the vegan myths, there's the three vegan myths that I sort of get asked most of all is, you know, where do you get your protein from? Which obviously I'm quite aware of where I get my protein from. So I say, you know, often I'm having more protein than the person that's asking me. The other vegan myth is that all vegans just live on processed fake meats. Like, I've never had corn in my life and I've been vegan 25 years. Like, I've looked into how they make it, and it just makes me feel a bit ick. I'm not going to lie. So I would say, whilst fake meats are useful transition foods when people are, you know, converting from omni to vegan or from vegetarian to vegan, I would say they shouldn't be the mainstay of your diet, because ultra processed foods are no go for, you know, we should all be avoiding those, whatever your dietary status is. And so, yeah, people think the vegans live off processed products. They don't necessarily. I think some people do, some people don't. I prefer what's called a whole food plant-based approach. to veganism, which is basically, you know, eating all the nuts, seeds, grains, sea vegetables and mushrooms and fruits. And legumes, obviously, useful protein source there. And the other vegan myth I would say is that people always say to me, oh, you're obviously not a foodie if you're a vegan. And I'm like, are you actually kidding me? Have you seen? I'm obsessed. My cookery books in my kitchen. I'm always thinking about my next meal. I lose hours on Instagram looking up recipes for 4-ingredient bliss balls. You know, I'm absolutely a foodie. And I would say a lot of my vegan friends are foodies, and we're very happy to spend, you know, our hard-earned cash on really decent vegan products. And a lot of vegans as well prefer to buy organic, because if we're eating a lot of fruit and veg, you want to make sure that, you know, it's not a lot of sprayed fruit and veg. So I would say they're the main vegan myths that I hear all the time. And also that, yeah, you're pale and pasty and lacking in energy. Whilst I've certainly met vegans that are pale and pasty and lacking in energy, I've also met some that are just like laser focused on it like a car bonnet. They're running ultras, you know, loads of the American Olympic team are vegans. I think that's sort of a bit, you know, come on, we're not really, it's, you can be a vegan, be healthy. You know, it's a bit of a sort of dogma to say that all vegans are 9-stone weaklings. I mean, size 16 over here, good energy levels generally, and, you know, 80 kilos and fairly muscly. So I would say that's a bit of just an old myth. It doesn't really serve anybody.
I'm super fit and energetic, and certainly not pale and pasty. So
Well,
there we go. Well,
try
it's
my best.
January. We're all a bit pale and pasty in January. You talk about food and how you love it in your cookbooks and everything. I'm going to just throw a curveball in here and ask you what your top 3 go-to vegan dishes are when you're like, you haven't got a lot of time. What do you put together that is satisfying, healthy, tasty? What are your go-tos in your house?
Okay, great question. So I would say my 3, I'm just thinking of my lunchtime, because lunchtimes I allow half an hour in between virtual patients. And so I've got 15 minutes to make my food and 15 minutes to eat it. Okay. So I would say my top 3 lunchtime ones are scrambled tofu with a side salad and avo. So tofu, turmeric, garlic, mushrooms, red peppers, and then a lovely seedy rainbow salad on the side, you know, bag of leaves. While the tofu's cooking, you're chopping up your avo. So scrambled tofu, rainbow salad. Everything's got seeds on the top, because why wouldn't you? My other really quick lunch would be like a tempeh scramble. So again, tempeh, garlic, red onions, kale. What else do I put in it? A grated courgette. So that's got protein, it's got color. And again, I would serve that. Almost everything's got half an avo on the side or some grated carrot. I'm always like, how can I up nourish this meal? Even if I'm having something lame. And again, this is probably a lunch that I have once a week, is, you know, gluten-free pasta pesto. So a jar of vegan pesto, which is based on pine nut and tofu, some brown rice pasta. And I'll just, while the pasta's cooking, I'll chuck some green peas in it, some green beans and some frozen spinach in the pasta water. So always having 3 veg there. Well, pasta water's cooking. I'm sometimes frying off some garlic mushrooms on the side, and then, you know, you combine the pasta with the jarred pasta pesto. If it's summer, I sometimes make wild pesto from the garden, from the, you know, the 3-cornered leek. And if I've got wild garlic, if I've been over to the woods or whatever, I make it. But I'm no stranger to a pack of, you know, vegan pesto. And that would be another quick lunch for me as well. And I'm always, when I serve up my food, again, what can I put on top of it? Often it will have a handful of rocket, and it have a sprinkling of pine nuts, and maybe some engevita, which is the yeast flakes that vegans have quite a lot of, or nooch they call it. And it's they're sort of they're from brewer's yeast, and they contain lots of B vitamins and zinc as well. So it's up nourish. So there's lots of layers, I would say, but they're all really cheap, very easy, lazy mum 15-minute lunches.
Amazing. Next thing will be a cookbook from you then, I think.
Which is space.
So it is Veganuary, while we're speaking, which is a popular month for people to try to go vegan. Many people do start there, I guess. What if you're trying it for the first time? What are your tips on how to start and what to look out for and how to do it healthily?
Okay, so I've got a few tips here. First with anything, before you set about doing anything, is know your why. Like, why are you doing it? Are you doing it because you love animals? Are you doing it because you're worried about global warming? Are you doing it because you're anti-fodder crops and, you know, deforestation? Know your why, because when you tell people you're going vegan for January or for any amount of time, the first thing people will say, why on earth would you do that? So it's important that you know your why from the offset. The second thing I would say is reach out to the team at Veganuary, because the resources that they have got available to you are second to none, and the enthusiasm. So whether that's via Instagram, via their website, you know, drop them an email. They have got resources galore. And the last time I looked, they were free as well. The other thing with Veganuary is don't try and reinvent the wheel. Okay, so take the meals that you're normally having. So say if you normally have spag bol, instead of putting the beef mince or the turkey mince in your spag bol, just use a sachet of lentils from Merchant Gourmet, maybe, or a tin of lentils from Sainsbury's, where you're frying off your garlic, onion, celery, and carrot. So don't reinvent the wheel. Just veganize the meals you're already having. If you're normally having a Sunday roast with all the veg and the Yorkies and the meat, then do all the same. You can make vegan Yorkshire puddings. There's a recipe online, super easy. My husband makes them all the time. And then just replace your protein. So if you're normally having, like, you know, a beef or chicken or whatever, you can maybe have we often do like a lemon and cauliflower roasted chickpeas, or you could have some like a tempeh burger, or you could have, we buy these quite nice clean by Strong Roots, they're called spinach and quinoa burgers, just if we're feeling a bit lazy. Yeah, and then you can still have all your, you know, your parsnips, carrots, potatoes, Brussels. You know, we normally have about 10 different veg on our roast. It's the best meal that our kids eat all week, so we really try and have one every Sunday. And my partner does amazing things with Brussels sprouts and yeast flakes and lemon juice. They are next level. Like sweet, I could eat them like sweets. He should bring out a product line, honestly. So they're my three things. Know your why, reach out for resources, reach out to me, drop me a line on Instagram. I'll be happy to help. And don't reinvent the wheel. Take what you're having and veganize it. So even if you're having something like scrambled eggs, you love scrambled eggs for breakfast, you know, just have scrambled tofu. A quick Google search, you know, scrambled tofu sometimes it's only got 5 ingredients in it. So just keep it basic. Don't try and go all ottolenghi on yourself. You're failing by the first week.
Yeah, you don't need to be ottolenghi by week 1. No. Okay.
Unless you want to.
Unless you want to, of course.
Yeah.
Good luck then. Okay. What are okay, so we've got the diet sorted out if you're going to do vegan, and obviously this is all a choice. I'm not vegan, just for disclosure, and Rachel is, and we do a very similar job, and we both get what we need from our diet. So all good. It's all choice and all informed choice, but we want to just emphasize that whatever diet you choose, you do it to the best you can in terms of health, because we're talking about nourishment as much as possible. So done, we've parked that for a second, and what I want to ask you is, it's not just about your plate, is it? So what first of all, I'm going to ask you, where are you in your menopause journey, and how has menopause affected your health and the way you approach your health and your toolkit, if you like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated to menopause on September the 5th. And what I mean by that is that I didn't have any periods for 12 months, from September the 4th, 2023 to September the 5th, 2024. So that's 12 months, no periods. Boom, menopausal, graduated to menopause, wanted to have an M party. I'd like to get a t-shirt with crone written on the front. If anybody's got such a thing, send me the URL. I'm your first purchase. And
You
so
better get me one as well.
do you know what I mean? Let's start a revolution, a chronevolution. And so my challenges with menopause, if I'm honest, were not physical. I touch wood, I got off quite lightly on the physical front. I didn't really have hot flushes or joint aches or dry mucous membranes or anything like that. My main challenges were at the time, I would say for about 2 to 3 years there, battling anxiety and overwhelm. So I really had to work on the mental and emotional side of things. I know a lot about HRT, and I talk to people about HRT all the time because most of my patients are on HRT. I didn't take it going through my perimenopause, but I was really glad that it was there, and I knew exactly what I would ask for if I did need it. But the things I found helped me with my challenges, which were overwhelm and anxiety, and not anxiety all the time, but it would be just like one time I had it for 10 days and I was like, oh my God, this is awful. What if I feel like this for the rest of my life? And then it just went. And basically the things that I found helped me were yoga, being boundaried, always doing your self-care, like no wiggle room with self-care. Like my Monday run is in my diary like a meeting. My weekend baths, reading every day, always having a cup of herbal tea after my meals for 5 minutes before I get back to my desk, going out with the dog every day, like starting each day with movement. you literally, if I do any more self-care, my partner's going to leave me. But like doing lots and lots of self-care, so always about like filling up your battery, because you know life's transactions will take away from your battery. But I was thinking the other day how like my work doesn't take away from my battery, my work adds to my battery, charges me up most of the time. Obviously occasionally you'll get a patient that's maybe slightly tricky, but most of the time my work charges me up. But so I would say those are my things. So self-care, building resilience, yes, sleep, and reducing alcohol as well. They were the things that I found really for my perimenopausal journey. Yeah, just can't drink like I used to. And an 8 hours sleep a night is a non-negotiable. Like literally I will cry if I get 7 hours sleep. I'll normally have tears the next day for one thing or another. My resilience will just go down to almost like 2 out of 10. So they're the things that I know I need. So knowing that, I can either, stick my finger up at that, or I can honor that. And I try where possible to honor that. It's always not always possible though, but I do try.
It's so important, isn't it, to actually think about and identify your personal needs, because they're not the same for everyone. A lot of people can get by on slightly less sleep, or they can handle their alcohol, or they can do this, but it's really important to know what affects you and your health and your symptoms and how you feel. And that's not many of us actually stop and do that, do we? So identifying those needs is so important. How did you go about that for you, and how did you work out what was affecting you and what wasn't?
Oh, because it was so acute. Like literally, I would just sometimes go into the kitchen to my other half and go, I'm up to here. I can't take on a single more thing. I can almost not even cope with you asking me what are we having for dinner. That the overwhelm was like that. And with the anxiety did become quite physiological. I would wake up feeling like I've been caffeinated, and I haven't had caffeine for about 10 years. So I'd wake up with palpitations. I'd wake up with an impending sense of doom. And again, I want to be clear, this was not every single day. It was just like I would get it. Sometimes I'd get it for 3 days and then it would go. And then sometimes my longest patch of anxiety was 10 days. And, in the scheme of things, poor me. But, that 10 days, to think that I could feel like that for the foreseeable, feel panicky and palpitation-y, and I lost my appetite, and everything I thought of that would normally bring me joy, I was just like, meh. It was really beastly. I would say to people, I wouldn't wish that feeling on anybody. And whenever I see a patient in clinic, I always say, I know what anxiety feels like for me. What does it feel like for you? Because everybody will feel it differently. For some people, they get IBS, or they'll get migraines, or for some people, they might have a panic attack. Touch wood, I've never had one of those, but they sound, my heart goes out to people that do. But so I couldn't, how did I identify my symptoms? I couldn't blimmin' ignore them, put it that way. They were just so, they were so horrid, and I hated them so much. So that pain point was a great motivator to up the self.
How did you work out what was going to help that though? That was kind of what I was after.
Oh, pardon me. Very lucky with the toolkit. So I knew, anti-anxiety herbs. I made myself up a lovely mix. We'll talk about herbs more in a minute, but I think in my mix, there were some adaptogens to help with overwhelm and build resilience. There were some anxiolytics, which means anxiety splitting herbs. There were some nervines, nervous system tonics. And when we talk about tonics and herbal medicine, tonics are like food for an organ system. So nervous system tonics are just, food for our nerves and our brain. I was religious about my supplements, like couldn't skip a day. And also, just saying no to a few more things. That's what really helped me. Just like creating space. When I get booked, if I've got back-to-back things with no wriggle room, that will very soon lead to anxiety for me. So because I know that, I always try and factor in a little bit of a buffer. And what a privilege to be able to do that when you're self-employed. Very lucky.
Yeah, totally. And you get patients to kind of like chart their like symptoms or how they feel on a day-to-day basis, because what's sometimes useful is to look at write a symptom diary or whatever, just to see how you're feeling at certain times of day, and it may be you may be able to link it back to what you had for lunch or breakfast, or activities that you're doing, so you can start to sort of spot a pattern that you might be a bit of a blind spot for you if you're rushing around doing everything.
Yeah, I do occasionally, not all the time. I do treat quite a lot of patients who have got PMDD. So for your listeners who don't know, that's premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and they are hyper aware of how their mood changes suddenly and starkly in the luteal or late luteal phase of their cycle, which is the phase of your cycle in between ovulation and menstruation. So they are already all over it. They know that they feel horrific. And some of my patients track it on their menstrual trackers on their phones. Some of them write it in their diaries. Do I ask patients to do it? I find they're often already doing it. They come to
Mm,
me knowing the pattern. But if they don't, then I give them a food and symptom diary, which
mm,
is basically, just breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks, and how are you feeling in terms of your mood and your symptoms. And some people they love doing that. For some people, it can be anxiety inducing
mm.
itself, because it's another thing to do if they're battling overwhelm.
That's
So
true.
it
That's
does
true.
depend on the patient. I'll sound them out. I'm like, how do you feel about doing that? And you can tell with their body language whether they're going to do that or not. So yeah.
So you mentioned a few of your herbs and potions. You are a medical herbalist. So what herbs do you tend to use most for balancing hormones and kind of menopause support?
Well, gosh, there's so many hundreds of herbs that you can use. But if I were to say like my top 4 or 5 that I use all the time, I would say so many of my patients suffer with headaches or migraines or low mood. So verbena, verbena officinalis, vervain, lovely purple flower. People have got it growing in their gardens.
I've got it in my garden. I
There
didn't know
you go. Yeah.
that was helpful.
Yeah, so if you ever got a headache or migraine, or anybody in your family, you can make you could make a tea with that. It's very bitter, but that bitterness is part of its therapeutic efficacy. So I use a lot of vervain, and again, I mostly work as a Western medical herbalist. I work with tinctures, which are the alcoholic extracts of the herbs. You can see some of those big amber medical bottles there. I also work with loose leaf teas, but as most of my patients are busy, time poor females with caring responsibilities, getting people to make loose leaf teas isn't always they're not likely to be compliant, and compliance is everything. So I tend to work with tinctures. The other herb that I use all the time, my number one herb for hot flushes, is Salvia officinalis, or red sage. And again, you're probably growing it in your garden. You can make yourself a tea. I think the sage tea tastes filthy. I would not take it myself. I would take drops if I had so tincture, drops of red sage tea, because it's phytoestrogenic, which means it's a plant, it's plant-based, and it's similar to estrogen, but it's absolutely not estrogen. And so sage is also a lovely student herb. It's cephalic, so it takes the circulation, it increases circulation to the head. It's great for concentration. It's great for cutting through brain fog. It's mildly antidepressant. I love sage. I love, and when people sometimes they come to see me, and they've got brain fog, they've got hot flushes, they're not sleeping, they're falling asleep at their desk. I'm like, sage, it's like a no-brainer. And I would normally not give sage on its own. I'd give it as part of, we herbalists work, we use polypharmacy. So we'll meet the patient, question them for, in session, and then we've put together a mix of between sort of 6 or 9 different herbs in a 500 ml bottle. So it's called polypharmacy. So sage would go in there as part of the mixture. Another herb I use all the time for those really heavy, clotty, painful periods of perimenopause, where we've got relative estrogen, unopposed estrogen in relation to progesterone, would be lady's mantle, Achillea vulgaris. And again, that grows as a weed. It's a delicious herb. I think it tastes mildly of cucumber. And lady's mantle is great for, those flooding, when you're changing your, very frequently, heavy floody periods that you just hard to contain. Lady's mantle can make those significantly lighter and significantly less painful. And what's the other herb? Oh, turmeric tincture, because turmeric is so many conditions. Well, perimenopause now is menopause and perimenopause officially recognized as inflammatory life phases, aren't they? I think I read that in your new book, Nikki. And without, of course, because when our sex hormones are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which are steroids, so they're massively anti-inflammatory when in balance, when they leave the building gradually, obviously all these little itises keep popping up. So as a herbalist and naturopath, it's about how we can reduce the itises, reduce the little fires that are popping up all over the body. And turmeric, either in a juice, use it in your cooking, take it in a tincture, can be massively helpful for people's headaches, for people's period pains, any sort of prostaglandin related pain, any joint pain. Yeah, turmeric, amazing. Endometriosis, turmeric is
Yeah.
strongly indicated. Yeah, so that's probably about 4 herbs I've mentioned there, and you can get them all from Neil's Yard. Obviously, you can buy turmeric organic online in bulk, in powder, and use it in your cooking. Chuck it into your hummus to make your hummus supercharged. Always promote a food first approach, and then we top up with medicines, I say.
Lovely. Right on up my alley. Itis, by the way, meaning anything that inflammatory, basically.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
any pancreatitis, gastritis, it just means inflamed.
Yeah.
Um, also anything, a lot of my clients are suffering with low sex drive, libido, dryness.
Mhm.
Anything herbal that helps with that?
Oh yeah. So
Mhm.
the two that spring to mind are, there's a lovely Ayurvedic herb called Shatavari, and it
Mm.
translates as she who has 100 husbands. So it is wonderful.
Oh, I
I
wondered what
know.
that meant.
Exactly. So that's a Sanskrit word for it. The Latin is Asparagus racemosa, and it's a root. It's like a very nourishing root vegetable grown in India. And shatavari would normally be taken as like a powder mixed up with some jaggery or a sweetener, and some in India they would just use cow's milk. I would make it up with almond milk, and you can drink it as a lovely sort of nourishing herbal Ovaltine if you like at bedtime, and then you can enjoy a really good night's sleep, or the 100 husband thing. And it's very good for tonifying. It's very good for like mucous membranes. So again, a lot of women have got genitourinary syndrome of the menopause, where they're a bit dry in the vagina. They can get dry mucous membranes in their mouth, in their eyes, just dryness all round. And so shatavari is really good for our mucous membranes. It's a nervous system tonic as well. It's also great for like people who've got really lingering respiratory complaints, like those coughs and colds that just don't go. And it's very cooling, and it's good for getting rid of hot flushes as well. It's probably my number 2 herb after sage for helping to get rid of hot flushes. It's also thought to be mildly phytoestrogenic as well. So that's a herb that I use for libido a lot. And the other one, people think of it as more of a male libido booster, but I use it in females all the time, depending on their Ayurvedic constitution. So whilst I'm a Western medical herbalist, I've also been trained in TCM energetics and Ayurvedic energetics. So whether the patient realizes it or not, when they walk in, I'm assessing them for their sort of dosha balances as well. And so the herb that I'm talking about for the other herb I'm talking about for boosting libido would be good old ashwagandha, Withania somnifera. And again, it's a root vegetable grown in India. And interestingly, it's harvested almost exclusively by women and B, by hand. And when you look at ashwagandha root, if you look up the pictures of it online, imagine like loads of carrots that are all like go like that. It grows like that. So it must be so hard to harvest, but it's an absolute beaut. It's my sort of number one. A drink, I give it to people who are just like on the floor. They've got nothing left in the tank because it's a wonderful adrenal tonic. People who just, the libido is missing in action. I give it to people who can't sleep. So the name Withania somnifera, somniferos means sleep inducing. So whilst it gives you energy if you take it in the morning, it can also be sleep inducing at night time. And that I just think is one of the amazing sort of amphoteric actions of herbs, that they can, if something's under functioning, they can boost it. If something's over functioning, they can downregulate it. And it's all to do with the anterior pituitary. But it's just fascinating stuff. How can one herb make you feel awake in the morning and then tired at night time? It blows my mind. But Withania, or ashwagandha, as we know and love it, it absolutely can. The taste is nasty. The name ashwagandha translates as ashwagandha in Sanskrit translates as strong as a horse or smells like a horse, and I think the taste is pretty nasty, to be honest. But
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
it's not like a lovely bedtime drink like shatavari. But yeah, so often people will take it in capsules. I'll put it into people's herbal tinctures, so it's liquid polypharmacy mix. Yeah, and people get great results on it. It's also good for people who've got an functioning thyroid as well. There's loads of indications for ashwagandha.
Nature is just amazing, isn't it? It has so many things that can, and obviously, pharmaceutical drugs base all their drugs on some of these ingredients. They're based on plants, aren't they? But we're sort of bypassing that and going straight to the root. What do you think about maca, by the way, before we finish? Because I get a lot of questions about maca.
Okay, good question. I'm glad you've asked that, because maca, whilst very efficacious and very stimulating and very adaptogenic, and for the listeners out there, adaptogenic means improving your body's response to stress. So a maca is very good at doing all of those. However, when maca is grown, and it's normally grown at altitude, where after maca is grown at altitude, you can't use the land for like 10 years afterwards. So I use it very, very sparingly. I don't have it in my witch's cupboard there behind. I don't use it when I use my third party dispensary. Um, I hardly ever prescribe maca, just because I'm like, oh my God, I can't leave those poor Peruvians with raped land. You know, that's awful,
Oh,
leaving the
yeah.
land with no nutrients in it. But that's how nutrient dense it is, because it's taken everything from the soil. So, I mean, if you've got some at home and you've already spent your money on it, by all means use it and enjoy it. But, you know, just do keep half an eye on the environment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Rachel, this has been absolutely fascinating. We've run out of time, unfortunately, because I know we could talk all day long. Thank you so much. Just finally, where can people find out more about you?
Oh, thanks, Nikki. So I normally hang out on Instagram, and my handle is at Naturopath Herbalist. Or if you'd like to drop me an email, I'm on info@rachelboon.co.uk. And thank you for having me, Nikki. It was so kind, and it's always lovely chatting to you.
Always, always. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you very soon.